What are we talking about today?
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Business Barbershop Podcast. I'm Chris,
I'm Keane.
and it is October 15th, 2024. Welcome everybody to the show. Hopefully, we're going to release this today because one of the first things that we're going to talk about is today is a very important day. Do you know what day it is, Keane?
One more day for me to get my corporate tax returns done.
You're wrong. Today is the day, and actually,
Today's the day.
your corporate
Not
tax
corporate,
returns
the
are
personal ones. Yeah, the corporate
Your
ones were done a month
personal
ago.
tax returns are due today, October
Yeah.
15th, 2024.
That's
File them today, not
Yep.
tomorrow. Here's why. Even if you, and by the way, this is a sort of a public service announcement to everybody. If you haven't done your taxes and you really just have no idea what you're doing, you should still try to fill something out. Go to TurboTax or go to TaxSlayer, fill your stuff out and file your returns today. Okay. You can always fix them later. But the penalty, even if you can't pay, by the way, a lot of people I think don't file their taxes because they can't pay. And they think if they don't file, they're going to somehow like buy themselves some extra time.
It
That's
actually just put a spotlight on you.
that's really wrong. Okay, it's really wrong. And here's the other thing too. There are penalties and sort of late fees for filing and not paying. There are also penalties and late fees for not filing and obviously not paying. The penalties for not filing are 10x, maybe even 100x what they are if you do file but don't pay. All right. If you don't pay,
If you owe, right?
if you owe, that's right.
Yeah.
If you owe. So and if you, I believe, I'm just going off the top of my head here. If you file and do not pay, the penalty is something like 0.05% per month. Okay. So not 5%, 0.05%. So on your $100, you're paying 5 cents a month in a penalty. Okay. Which is, nobody wants to pay that stuff, but that's tiny. If you don't file, it's 5% per month. And you have additional penalties for not filing. So file your taxes. Okay. I have good news though. If you live in a state, the bad news is you have to have been ravaged by a hurricane. But the good news is if you were ravaged by a hurricane, you have until May 1, 2025 to file. And if you Google just to make sure who you are, but it's like Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia. There might be one more state that's in there. And there's a couple counties in Tennessee, and there's a one city in Virginia randomly. So file your taxes though. Okay. It's important. And then get a good bookkeeper and a good tax strategist. So next year your stuff is done on time. BigBirdAccounting.com is a great place to check on that if you need some help.
Yeah. How's it going, man? Good.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. So we have a goal. Our goal is to get to 6 figures recurring revenue, annual, like ARR, annual recurring revenue by the end of the year. We're at like 80, a little over 80 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So need a few more clients by the end of the year to hit that mark. And then,
Do you hire some people overseas to help you with the business?
I have a bookkeeper. I just have a bookkeeper that's helping me right now. And Brooke is helping with some of the, a lot of this. Not, I don't want to minimize what she's doing. She's doing a lot of the social media, like analytics, thumbnails. She is like actually trying to optimize some of the stuff that we're doing from a content generation perspective, and she's going to start running some YouTube ads here pretty soon. But yes, I have a bookkeeper that helps me. She is overseas, and it's going pretty good so far. No complaints.
How does it work when you hire someone overseas that you don't have enough work for them to be hired full time?
I just pay them full time and fill them up.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So she's almost there. I think right now, I think we're at like 16 clients or so. I think about 25 would be about full-time work for her. So I'll just keep going until she's full, and then I'll hire another person and fill them up, and just keep going. The new person can train sort of under my current person and slowly get people. then my goal, and then this leads into what it's a perfect segue. Leads into what I did want to talk about. We kind of referenced it a couple weeks ago. We didn't meet last week, but a couple weeks ago, we're talking about goal setting. Because it's the sort of beginning of Q4, and how we do that, and that kind of stuff, and then so for me next, what I'm really trying to do right now is set up a system where I can reliably get like one client a week in 2025 to start. And if I can do that, then it's just like gangbusters from there.
Yep.
No looking back.
Remember we had that we had an episode we talked about multiple streams of revenue.
Yeah.
Why don't we do an accounting and count our sources of revenue and see how they are versus back then. I'm gonna take a quick list. So obviously I make money from my own residential loans when I originate. That one's down.
Yep.
Also, running the residential branch, that one's also down. A lot of people that were in the branch are no longer here anymore. Although our expenses are cut.
Mm-hmm.
So we're teed up well for a really strong 2025, strong end to 2024. We have a commercial lending company. That one's way up. We have our HOA management company, also up. Our regular rentals, our short-term rentals / midterm, I lump them together. Does it count when you have a property management company and the only customer is yourself?
I think if you are planning on adding people in the future, then yeah, I would count it.
A lot of these businesses I opened them out of necessity for need for myself, and I did not plan to scale them. The HOA company was definitely one of those. And the commercial lending company was designed for like a one-off. It wasn't designed for like a high-level scaling, but it for sure scaled. So, yeah, we'll add it. I'm going to add it because if I wasn't paying my company and my staff to do it, I'd keep the other people I hired to do it. So I'm either paying myself or I'm paying someone else. But I'm not. I'm not a self-manager. So, and we're absolutely positioning that we could take on other clients in the future. I always think about like whenever I see someone make a request that they're looking for a manager, I was like, do I propose it now? Nah, too soon.
Yeah.
And
then, you got a lot going on. So one of the things, keep going if you want, but and not if you want, keep going. But the one thing that I would say, to sort of take this in both directions with goal setting and also with, just revenue streams is, I think where people can get in trouble is they have a list of 10 revenue streams, and to divide your time equally amongst 10 or even 5 is kind of hard, and also probably doesn't get you really where you want to go. So you kind of find yourself, or should consider at least, focusing on 1 or 2 at a time and circling back or not as those things that you're focusing on, continue to grow. Because for me, I have been spending time on my accounting firm, and it hasn't been to the detriment of my law firm, but I have not focused as much on growth of the law firm as I might if I wasn't doing this, because the growth related activities are right now geared toward the accounting firm. And for the law firm, it's not, I'm not trying to grow, but I'm not doing a lot of like new type of stuff.
Yeah. No, it's good you point that out. So I got done now. Okay. I felt like I was forgetting something, but I remembered some. So this is not including if I do any development to sell, that's going to be in the future. That will be another stream, but I've paused on that for a moment. I've only been doing developments to keep. So I'm going to first go over the active ones.
Okay.
residential loan origination, running my branch, commercial lending. The HOA management company is a kind of a blend, but the sales process for it is definitely active. Doing property assignments, and then my development company. That's 6 on the active. And then this passive is the HOA company shows up again, and then my rentals. And then I even though I convert some rentals to short-term rentals, I still consider it separately because the process of operating them is very different. And then the property management company. So there's 4 passive / real estate related ones, and then you could count a 5th one being dividends I get on my stocks too.
Okay. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But because they kind of fall in the same category that I would consider like my passive rentals.
Yep.
But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whew, that did go up, didn't it?
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot, which is fine. I mean, if they're on the passive side, that's fine. Like I have my rental house. I would consider dividends and stuff like that for me too. I would actually consider my coaching business to be passive now because I'm just literally not trying to grow it at all. I still do have a weekly meeting with everybody, but I literally just had to show up, and talk, so there's no prep. There's no work involved in that.
So it sounds like I have a lot of actives, but the truth is that doing one marketing aspect for all of them.
Right.
Hey,
they all kind of invest,
yeah. You want to invest in property? I'll help you finance it. Right. Hence, the 3 different lending sources will help you develop it and do the condo conversion. When you're ready to sell them, we'll take on HOA managing it. And if I find a great property I don't want to close on and I'd rather share it with my clients, I'll sign it.
Right.
And then when I sign it, I literally do all of the things that are on the list. So like one client, one property, all the businesses apply. They're each individual businesses or revenue sources, especially since the residential lending is not my company. I run a branch. It's more like we operate it more like a franchise, but technically it's a retail operation. Yep. But the reason why I can juggle those 10 or 6 actives, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 actives. Is I'm really pitching the same client. It's like, it's like Best Buy saying, "Oh, well, pick what you want to do. Do you want to sell appliances or computers or car stereos or home theaters or cell phones or accessories, or like, how about we just throw them all in the same box?"
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I'll push back a little bit because even though I'm not disagreeing with you that they are very like synergistic, but there still is like administration and delivery of service inside of each of those categories that is probably doesn't have a lot of overlap necessarily. Like they're each their own individual type of thing. And if you can find people that can do some of that stuff for you, it's not too bad. But when they're tiny, you're still often doing a lot of that back end work on your own. And that's where your time can get kind of sucked up.
The only one that I still need to do more time sucked into it is the HOA management one, because that is administratively the one that requires the least amount of work, and so it gets ignored the most.
Yeah.
I have for the companies I own, like the commercial lending company, development company, I have people on contract that used to work for me that would just do work for a contract fee. So, simple work email them, forms are done, they just run with it. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. The lending part definitely has layers to it, but that's been my main job for a long time. Running the branch, processing, admin, email, the whole 9, right? So I'm not going to act like those were just like, oh yeah, just start a mortgage branch and have a commercial brokerage while you're at it. I'm like, no, that's not it.
Right. That one's been going for a long time.
The reason why I added these layers to these businesses is because the hardest parts is what I already did. And I just kept on stacking on the easy stuff that was just kind of like an add-on sale. And it was a good move. I think that I think there's a really good chance that the residential lending portion of it will end up being half of my income next year. And it's not because it'll be going down. I think it's going to go up next year versus this year. But I think it's still going to be less than half moving forward.
Because your other stuff is growing.
It is. And it's taking me a while to kind of, I've been slower in conceptualizing how to maximize the profit in people see what I'm doing and they see I can charge a lot more, but I'm trying to be thoughtful of just trying to gouge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say, let's make the absolute most profit and then adjust as the market adjusts. The problem with that is that you start to set standards for how things are going to be done. And I want to set a standard that just kind of says like, look, here's a fair amount that long-term will be really hard people compete with. If they try to compete with me in a space. So I'm going to just standardize the pricing in a space that I feel like people are happy to pay it long-term. And
plus, when people
just,
are happy, the upside to that is people are much more likely, I believe, to like sing your praises, and that is a business where, I mean, and same with my accounting firm, where, referrals can become a really, really big part of the business. It's kind of a thing where, a lot of those people hang out together and talk about when they have good experiences, and, that can really snowball on itself too over time if you do a good job. So, cool. All right. So how do you, with all of those, how do you prioritize what you want to work on with all of those different things going on? Like what do you look at when you're looking at like, have you already thought about like this quarter goals way before this quarter comes up, or do you wait until the quarter is like on the verge of starting to figure out what you want to do?
I've thought about it. It's, goals get broken up into projects. Projects get broken up into steps, right? And I have so many projects and steps in front of me that I haven't even thought about bigger goals that would create more projects and steps. And I think you accidentally take on projects when you don't mean to also. Like I'm buying a property in Bremerton. That was not on my list of things to do this year, but sometimes when you see the margins are just too good, it's hard to pass. Something screams it was meant for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one just looks so much like a Keane deal.
Yep. Yeah, I think too. What I'm finding is it's getting just a lot more boring over time. Both sort of the more businesses grow and the more experience that you get, you begin to realize what your goals really entail often is just doing the same thing over and over and over again for just a really, really, really long time,
Yep.
And sometimes part of the goal is just finding someone to do the thing that you've been doing for a long time that you don't want to do anymore, but still just doing like more of that.
Right.
And people don't get there all the time because it's boring, and you end up twiddling your thumbs a little bit, I think, from time to time, because things are just working, or you're just knocking things out, and you're just sort of, there's a time component, at least for what I'm doing. And
I wish I could tell you it's because I was bored, because it's far from that. It's more of just, right. My brain doesn't shut off. And so I always think about what is long-term optimization. And sometimes when I start to like clear off some of the things on my plate, I will start to initiate some of those long-term optimizations that I've been thinking about for a long time. In fact, buying in Bremerton was exactly that.
Yep.
Remember we had the meeting with Tim where we were talking about, 1%, cap rate investments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wondered why he didn't, he owns stuff in Bremerton, and it falls just a little bit short of that 1%. But meeting that 1% in that market, if you're willing to do value adds, isn't hard. So when I blended what I already knew into that market, blending some short-term, blending some condo conversions, getting to that 1% within that market is actually very doable for me. And so for me, it felt like, okay, I might have to do a little bit more work on the deals, but I don't have to learn how to invest in a different state to get the same return. So I made a decision after, I pictured like, hey, moving some of these assets to a better cash flow market makes a lot of sense. But if I have to do a little bit more work for something in state and less work of having to research something out of state, because all the places I was looking at buying something, I would, are not places I'd want to visit. And I'd say that Bremerton fits that too.
Yeah,
but taking a 40-minute ferry on the water, like the most pleasant part is probably the ferry ride.
Yeah.
Over. Which, by the way, everyone always acts like the only way to get there is a ferry. It's like if you actually drive there, I mean, I think from where you're at, driving there is a little bit of of a stretch. But if you're anywhere south of Seattle, driving to Bremerton doesn't really take any longer than taking the ferry. The time it takes to get to
Right.
Seattle, wait for the ferry, wait for the dock, wait to get off, and the
Well, the
40
ferry
minutes on.
wait itself can just cause you tremendous problems,
Mm-hmm.
because you never
They
know
don't
when the
always.
ferries are running or not. Like all
Yeah,
kinds
they
of
go
weird
down.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what
but
I
I
like
think,
about taking the ferry? It's not about the time that you save. It's the fact that I'm not commuting. They're doing.
Yeah.
I can work.
Oh yeah.
Right.
For sure. Agree.
You know,
Agree.
it's like when
I'll take
it's like when you go on a business trip. Sometimes the best ideas you get on your business trip are on the flight there and back.
Of course. Oh yeah.
Because you have that quiet time.
Definitely. Oh yeah. I'd
Yeah.
always take a bunch of notes, do a lot of thinking on the plane. 100%. Yep. Yep. So what do you how do you prioritize your goals then for the quarter? You just have things that you're working on that you just keep
I have a
going?
whole list of projects I'm working on, and so I don't know if they count as goals, but I think that people would say buying a value add deal in a new city that you plan to would fit a goal. Well, I'm within a couple of days of closing.
Yeah,
So
maybe. So here's what I would say. How do you get when you get to the end of this year, and maybe you don't do this and that's okay too. But how, when you get to the end of the year and you say like, okay, was this year a good year or not? Like, do you have a measurement tool for that? Or is it just a feeling?
Yeah. So no, it's not a feeling. But I can answer that question for you very distinctly. And actually, it has a lot to do with my philosophy about goals and success. I think mid-range goals are good to make sure that you're on track for your long-range goals. And short-term goals are also good for your mid-range goals, which help you with your long-range goals. But I learned a long time ago, a lot of people struggle with setting big goals because the bigger the goal is, the more it feels like it's out of reach, whether it's a money goal, a weight goal, whatever it's going to be, cash flow goal, whatever it's going to be. And so people have a tendency to psych themselves out. And what I've learned and what we talked about in the show multiple times is that the secret to those big goals is through the process of little steps. It's the whole compound effect. It's the slide edge, is where you want to call it, right? And so I set very, very, very big goals, and I have the same long range goals I've had for years. And so every year, it's everything I'm doing from short, mid, to long term is a progression towards those goals. And so even if you go to like 2023, where my income was way down, right? And I looked at what my foundations in front of me and what I'm building towards, did I progress towards those goals? And the answer is yes. Yeah. I mean, oddly, in a way, with even income going down like 75% from the residential side of the origination business, right? I massively progressed towards my goals. The portfolio, establishing short-term rentals, establishing long-term goals, establishing myself. Like, in fact, I even moved my long-range goals. Remember, I talked about 50 to 100,000 a month was my range, right? I've just walked away from the 50. I'm done with it. 50 is not in my range anymore. It's 100 plus. It's 100 plus, right?
I moved 100 plus K a month in income.
Yep. I've moved on from the 50K a month. Because not that I'm in a position to be in that spot, but I'm within an arm's reach of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like if we have any, and I don't think we will, I think it'll be modest, but if we had anything close to the surge that we had between 2014 to 2018, which is, if you remember, 2011 to 2016, 17 is really the main surge. But just even with 18 being kind of a slower year, like go from like 14 to 19 right before COVID, that 5-year run where it wasn't like the fastest surge, but we're still in growth, which is, I think, will be a little slower than that, but similar to that. If I had anything close to that 5-year run in the next 5 years, what I have right now would hit that. And so I've the 50,000 a month. So I'm moving on from it. I don't have like sustaining and maintaining, which is a lot of work, is all I need to do to hit that goal now. In fact, it's technically doing that for a longer period of time is going to help me hit the 6-figure goal, right?
Yeah.
So every property has a plan, and seeing it come to its maximum value in fruition to what it possibly could be, and part of the grand scheme of things, is really just the the job. It's just, a bunch of little projects I have to get through. It's like, imagine if you're a guy who likes to restore classic cars and you just got this junkyard full of these great cars and you just can only work on so many at a time. And that's very much what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's all part of getting towards that goal.
Remind me, does the 100K represent something like broken down? Does it get you like, is it like, or is it just sort of like a number?
So I've historically made between the 50 to 100,000 a month for a bulk of my career.
Right.
And when I'm in that range, when 50 is the low and 100 is the high, my lifestyle,
you kind of do whatever you want, basically.
Pretty much.
Like you just don't have to think that much about it. There's no like anything that you want to do. Obviously, there might be some, like, I don't know, let's say fly private or something. You may not be able to fly private all the time.
I won't fly private. Like that, I still have limitations on my watch collection. There's some really rich people in watch collection, so I can't go totally nuts in that space. Although I can go a little nuts, right, as I've exemplified in the past. I can own waterfront property, but I can't live on the lake as my primary. I'm not living in a $10 million house, right? I know I have a handful of friends, colleagues that are, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's, in fact, I'm looking at a text from my phone right now. A friend of mine who's already on the beachfront on Puget Sound, beautiful $3 million house, great interest rate too. Now wants to buy another one just to get an extra 500 square feet, right?
Really?
Yeah. But what's funny is that she's gonna rent the old one, and
she's gonna build one. Is that you said?
She's gonna rent the old waterfront house.
Oh.
So like I actually can't even count how many friends I have that live on water. Right? Do I own on the water? Yeah, I have a property on Angle Lake. Right? I would say that out of all my friends, I have the most ghetto waterfront. It's in CPAC, but I couldn't be more proud of it. It's a qualified opportunity fund, right? I spent a lot of time putting together that tax code.
Yeah,
I think it's
a good investment.
It's a total hack that I have a qualified opportunity fund that's waterfront in Keane County.
Yeah,
and
you get to use it too, right? You use it every once in a while.
Yeah, I do. In fact, that was one thing I bought. One of my other things this year, I kept saying I wasn't going to buy that much property, but I did need to buy my friend Jason's. I think I told you that he partnered with me on that property. He took one of the cabins.
Yeah.
I took the other two, and then we sold that one to. I bought his other one, so I officially own all three of those cabins,
nice.
other than one that sold to a tenant, which is way back at the street. And so, next will come eventually developing all that land, because it's like over an acre of land.
Nice.
I
get having waterfront property, but maybe I'm just too pragmatic. I don't know what the word is, but when I look at, I'm not buying any kind of waterfront property anytime soon. But even when I look at like, okay, where would we want to live next? Like where we want to rent a place? Like there's some nice places you can rent. Probably like your friends. I'm like, to get to that place, it's going to add like 30 minutes of drive time for me anywhere I want to go, And I'm just like, I don't want to be pissed off every time I leave and come to my house because I'm driving so much.
And what's nuts is like there's a super expensive houses that are convenient. West Bellevue, Houghton, right?
Yeah.
East of Market, West of Market, wherever.
For sure.
And then there's like the nearby waterfront in those neighborhoods. And when you combine those two together, the multiplier and the price is just out of this world. So if you want to have both, let's just take, so let's say, I wanted to trade all 30 of my properties, right? For, what would it buy me? It would buy me a very modest waterfront house in West Bellevue, like less than 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Right. Good location. It'll be like West Bellevue, Medina, right? But it wouldn't be a big one. It had to be a really small one. if I traded it all in, because right now
Yeah.
the equity position on all those properties is about 10 million bucks. So I know what 10 million buys you in West Bellevue on the water, and it's a really nice lot with a small house or
Yeah.
a pretty nice house on a not very nice waterfront, like High Bank, skinny waterfront, whatever.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't have a dock, something like that, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't buy you anything super special on the water. It's just middle, slightly, maybe even below average. I don't know. I see them when my clients want to buy them, right? I pre-approve them when I look at the stuff.
Yep.
I guess there's variations of that amount, right? But like if for what you're describing, that would be, if you want to stay on the east side, you're talking, I think that the closest place that you can get a little bit of a discount would be like North Kirkland waterfront, like Juanita Bay.
Right. Juanita Bay, because you know why? Because it takes you 45 minutes to get out of there if you need to go to the highway at the wrong time of the day.
Yep.
Like it's just insanity to try to get in and out of there. And that's just not a price.
Just coming from the Juanita Bay Beach Park to.
Yeah. I know
what's
you've
crazy
experienced
though?
it.
You know what's crazy is that I would argue that that's kind of the same for west of Market, because you're all the way down on the water.
It is. It's close. Yes, it's very. Yeah, they're definitely like. I probably wouldn't do West of Market myself because it's deep. I would do like downtown Kirkland, and then south, like towards 520, for
Houghton.
water views. Yeah, Houghton for water views, things like that. I would do that. Area is still pretty easy to get around in, and then East of Market is not waterfront, but it's also, I think, it's pretty good. But even then, man, I can tell you right now, it's because they're putting so much stuff in there. It's getting like really much more dense.
Mm-hmm.
Like the wrong time of day to get into the neighborhood, it's like it's a lot of traffic in there. Just like locally,
That's why I have this one property. It's just right next to 405, right off of the 85th and 405 exit in the Kirkland Highlands.
Yep.
And even though it's not big and it's a little noisy, there's something about being that close to everything.
Yeah.
I mean, 85th Street exit, getting from the 85th Street exit to downtown Bellevue is actually faster than any exit off of 520, other than Houghton. If you're
that's mine. I'm at the 70th Street exit, so I'm one farther south.
Yep.
And it's the same. I can get to downtown Kirkland in 5 minutes. I can get to downtown Bellevue in 7 minutes, depending, because I'm like right on the highway right there. It's just like once you've done that.
Are you Bridle Trails right now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sleeping.
But like right at like my house backs up to that park and ride though at 70th Street exit. So
you're really close.
I'm really close. I am like really, really close. So
yeah. I mean, the 70th Street exit to me is almost like it's like the north end version of Southeast 8th Street on 405. The first exit goes into Bellevue right after Factoria. To me, 70th is the same thing on the north end. It's like you just pass the 720 and it's like you're right there.
It is. And here's the main difference. The other cool thing is if you get on the 70th Street entrance going north, it takes you directly to the 85th Street exit. You don't even, this, you don't even have to get off, So to go from my house to like downtown Kirkland via 85th Street takes me 5 seconds, depending on the time of day, because they changed the exit. But anyway, I think it's just kind of a thing where once you've experienced that, it's really, really hard to. It's like here in Seattle, if you have never had AC in your house, you're like, oh, it ain't that big a deal. But once you get AC in your house, you're like, I'm never going to have a house without AC again,
Yep.
So,
yep.
That's
yep.
All right.
I have an update for us. I think we maybe did before. Did I give you an update on the they give you guys an update on the ADU codes yet?
I don't think so. Maybe, but
I think we talked. I thought
we did do an update episode. I don't know how long ago it was though. Maybe a month ago. Are there new updates? New ones? There were some deadlines looming, right? Weren't there?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm sure I'm behind, but these are just and just so you guys know, you probably think I'm super. I'm like that. I know just because I know other people don't do the work, they just won't do the work. I'm way ahead of everyone else, but I'm not proactively researching cities who are updated unless they're on my radar from what I've seen to have a lot of opportunity, right?
It's fine. You're a nerd. It's no big deal. Just living your nerdiness.
Yeah, but some of these I get surprised. One of them I was really surprised with because the way I read their code did not seem like it was updated because they hit it in this other section of their code was Bothell. Bothel's done, and they've been done for a while, and I would have never guessed. And then Silicon kind of looks like Snoqualmie. They're just a city that said, let's just copy paste what the state requires us to do.
Right.
So, but I think Bothel's a pretty big one. So that's a new one. So as of right now, the ones who've already updated their code is Edmonds, Kent, Everett, although I would argue that Everett said they meet the state requirements, but I don't think that they do. Snoqualmie, Stillicum, and Bothell. And most people are just excited about hearing what updates are coming from Seattle because everyone's just copying. The current ADU developers can't get their head out of Seattle. They're all copying each other. And I warned one of my clients yesterday. I said, look, guys, you guys can't keep copying and pasting each other too much. Like you pay too much for the properties and there's too much inventory coming to market. There's like the margins are shrinking. It's better to have more margin and test a new market than it is to try to squeeze blood out of a turnip.
Right.
I do believe that people should always keep their pulse on Seattle because Seattle will always be the poster child for it. But I think the pendulum swung too far. People need to be looking at how to do deals somewhere else. But yeah. And I'll probably just keep myself busy between Bremerton, Everett. Bremerton has updated their code, but when I talked to one of their planners, they made a good point, which is there's not that many updates they have to do. I think they have to relax their parking restrictions a little bit. Other than that, they're pretty much ready to go. And so, but I am going to be relying on, I am a little bit relying on them to update their code for the one I'm buying. Not totally, but a little bit. So
you're going to start calling them up.
Well, they have some time.
Where are we going on this? Where are we on this process? Do they have to the end of the year? Is that what it
they
is?
Have, technically, everyone has until June of next year.
Okay.
That's the absolute deadline. But what happened is that some of the way the law was written is that they are supposed to have their updates done within their first 6 months of the comprehensive plan meeting. So the cities that have already met and started doing and started talking about doing this, the clock is ticking. And I think some of them might be kind of blowing past that, but no one's holding their feet to the fire.
Right.
But by the state law, if let's say for Kirkland, let's say that they already did their meeting and let's say they're past 6 months and have to update their code. I think Redmond would actually fit this. I think they've already passed their 6 months and they're still planning it to be ended the beginning of this year. Technically, by state law, if I went to them and said, I want to develop 2 ADUs based off of the minimum standards that the state says, even though you haven't updated your code, by the law, the way it's written, I can. It literally says if you have to update it within 6 months of your comprehensive plan meeting or the development standards that are written in that law precede the city's code, and people can start developing it now. But I don't know anyone's going to even try that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they're doing their best to try to honor it.
Yep. Interesting.
Yep. Somebody's spending some time doing some research on Bothell, but I expect Bothell to look a lot like my research in Kirkland. I think it's going to look a lot like North Kirkland. I think it's the same developers, same covenants, same looking neighborhoods. And so, the way they wrote the code was not as straightforward. And so it'll take me some time to kind of read through it a little bit. I can't tell if they're excited to implement the stuff or if they're making it complicated on purpose to try to keep people from doing it. I can't tell. But they've definitely put a lot. The way they did it, they've put a lot of work into it. Because basically, there's two bills that passed: a multifamily one and the ADU one, right? And the ADU one had more restrictions and more strict timelines on it. So everyone's kind of doing that first. Mm-hmm. But the multifamily one says that if you want to combine your efforts so that what you're putting in place meets both the requirements, not just one, you can. But because the HB 1110 didn't have a deadline, no one was doing it except for Bothell. Bothell did it. They did the full requirements by Bill 1110 and 1337, and they lumped it together in the same section of the code. So you have to develop based off of that standard, which is more of a multifamily standard than it is an ADU standard. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Well, there's progress.
Yep.
What do you? So tell me this. What are your? What are your goals for the quarter? What's like two of your big goals for the quarter? What are your two of your biggest projects?
Oh,
Do
I
you write
lump a
your
bunch
goals
of them
down?
together in one. Yeah,
Do you
they're
write them
literally
down?
there's literally a board of things that I'm working on, and um, like I said, I kind of lump them all together. But if I were to look at them and say which one of these are big goals,
Yeah. Not big goals. Not which ones are the like what are the top one or two that you like really want to are focusing on for the quarter? You know, like is there anything that you really want to make sure gets done?
kind of did it. Because
They're
everything
already
else on
done.
all the things on that list, I don't really have an option. I got to do them. So I can say I need to get these things done, but honestly, it's not really an option. Like
They're
to
just
not say
already
it's a
like in
goal.
progress, basically.
Yeah, there are a bunch of properties I'm converting to furnished rentals. Plus, you know, the one I'm buying, I got to close on that. I got to work on that, and I got to refinance that. So I just give myself a whole bunch of projects related to that one. But the rest of them are just properties I already have. Some of those things on that list I need to cross off. I've already done it. Like I put on there, I was going to buy the CTAC property from Jason. That's already done. One of the big things, actually, this is probably good for people to hear. If you've got a bunch of property and you have to worry about like your insurance coverages on it, and you worry about things like you see that people having issues like hurricanes. We're due to have like an earthquake. Our earthquake could cause flooding, like my property's in Alki, and
Mm-hmm.
you're worried about having all these different coverages. You just need to get what they call a DIC policy, is what I've been told from some of the insurance people. Difference in coverage policy. It basically is an over and above your coverage policy for any kind of natural disasters and encompasses all those things: flood,
Kind of like an
earthquake,
umbrella policy, a little bit,
sort of.
but
Yep,
for a specific, but for natural disasters.
for basically any kind of liability, kind of claim that, or not liability, but property claim that's outside of your normal coverage. If you want to have them covered, which for me makes a lot of sense because I just bought 4 houses on the hillside. You know, there's no
Yeah.
signs of a landslide there, but if there was, I'd be in big trouble. um,
Right.
and all my stuff in Alki is right in that Seattle fault line. That whole neighborhood will flood if the earthquake happens where they think it's going to happen. So, yeah, I need to get a DIC policy. That's one of the things on my list. And I guess the biggest one on there that I've been holding off, but that I'm excited to do next year is I mentioned that one of my sources of income, which this is a newer one. We definitely did not talk about this the last time, was doing like property assignments.
Okay.
Every assignment I've done has been either a extension of someone else's wholesale fee or an on the market deal where I tied it up, put together the whole plan, and then wholesaled it. Traditionally, in that space, you go directly to the property owners. And I'm not trying to do it on a super large scale, but I've done that to acquire properties in my own portfolio. And it just makes sense that I start that again. So I'm excited to start that process of marketing out to the homeowners, because it'll give me more opportunity what I could buy, more opportunity for my clients, and then obviously more opportunity for revenue. Because when I sign those deals, like all those business I mentioned, all the other ones get paid too.
Right.
And so I'm excited to do that. It's a very different thing that I've never done before. A lot of direct to consumer real estate marketing. So it's going to feel more like what the agents are doing, in a way, sort of.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to see how that goes.
Are you going to be doing like direct mail and stuff like that mostly, or like what's that?
Yeah, I'm going to at the moment, I'm only going to just copy the strategy I do now, which it's just what I know works. I do a lot of research ahead of time, identify the ones that just have margin for the way I want to develop it. So when I reach out to them, I don't have to be the best negotiator. I just need to buy it for what everyone else in the market says it's worth. But my version of how to develop it, there's margin in it. And so I compile that list and I reach out to those homeowners. And they're usually landlords, so they're usually better off than like a lot of the homeowners are financially. So they're not someone who's going to get talked into getting their property sold for super cheap, but they're just not in a position or want to be the one to see it through or know how to see it through. They're just a buy and hold person who doesn't have any interest in being a developer. And so, and there's a market value for the property, and and they won't sell it for less than that. But the market value has a lot of margin to develop if you develop it the way I do it. And so, usually when I get that list, I do that research ahead of time, and then I just send a handwritten envelope with certified mail. That's
Right.
I wish I could tell you guys that there's some secret to what I'm doing. I just try to be extremely honest. I don't hide anything, because the minute I feel like I'm hiding something, my pitch sucks. So I'm just very clear, you know. And I think they take the seriousness for the fact they have to sign to receive it. You know what I mean? There's effort that goes into sending it that way. And so my response rate's pretty high. But I also don't send out that many. So.
Right.
But I've historically not sent as many because I only want to send them at the rate that I could actually close on them. So this changes that. This changes that a little bit.
It's going to add another level of busyness to what you do.
It is, but what I've realized is that with my pivoting my business to this new space I'm in, is that getting more clients is not going to rapidly increase my deal flow, because by nature, 95% of everything out there, I would red light and be like, nope, no margin, not buying it. And so getting new clients is not the hard part. It's just as much more properties. And so client intake is the first thing, right? So I'll keep doing it, but next year will be the perfect time to start implementing a percentage of my marketing efforts in that direction. So
cool. I know. I just remembered something else I wanted to talk about, sort of like at a high level. So because I'm just curious about this. You and I and a couple other people, three other people, I think it was 5 of us total, went to this networking lunch last week.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
Yep.
And it's something that I would never set up on my own. And I'm not really sure exactly what the goal is with something like that. If it's really just like hanging out with people that you have some like synergy with. I'm curious to know, like, what, like,
I'd laugh because you do everything in your power to fight doing this part of the business. Yeah. So me, Nick, and John are all course students, right?
Yep.
And the business plan's pretty simple. You try to get 400 dedicated, know them well, very loyal past clients, and about 50 high level, common interest business partners. And in being in a relationship with that 450 person list is enough to generate whatever amount of business you need it to in a service-based business. And the goal isn't to make that list. You can make the list bigger, but it usually just does better to just keep elevating the quality of that list. If that makes sense.
Yep.
And so, a lunch like that represents kind of like the perfect version of what we're doing, because in that 1 hour, 1.5 hour slot, we can reconnect with several business partners that we're already doing business with and meet a new one, right? We call them buddy lunches, right? And so, we track our business activity through our conversations that we have in a week with either clients or potential referral partners. And it's something our coaches taught us, talk to 80 plus people a week that want to do business with you or want to support your business. As long as they're clients or people of influence that would be easy for them to naturally refer to you, then that's all you have to do to get the business you want. And if you're not getting the business from doing that activity, either A, it's the wrong people, or B, you have the wrong approach in what you're saying and what you're doing when you talk to them. But it's more than enough. And everything that me and John and Nick have been doing over the last 10 years, being in the core, is all driven around that activity.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I get it. It's
I
just a
mean, look,
lot of work.
it's a lot of work, but at the same time, like this, I think that here's the other part too. As your business improves, the versions of this that you do, um, you get to choose the frequency and the stage into which you hold it, right?
Yeah,
When your business is new, you kind of will talk to anybody any
for
way you
sure.
can to get to grow. But
Yes.
for instance, I can get 30 plus people in a room teaching the classes on the stuff I'm doing on a drop of a hat, very often more, and get several
Right.
clients every single time, right? And um, and the platform and frequency in which I teach that is up to me, right? So I only like to teach things and do things I prefer doing now. So I like doing this kind of work. I do like teaching this kind of material. I like doing business with certain kind of people. And as you get better at doing the activity, the more you can improve that circle of people you're doing it with. And kind of like how the lunch was, it doesn't even feel like work then.
Yes, agree. No, it didn't. It wasn't like a. It wasn't like a. I had a good time.
Yeah.
It was fun. It's just net. It's not something that I would ever set up. I think I also just don't have as much overlap for that, for like people to send me work. I don't know.
That's not
Just
true.
different.
You get a lot of work. But here's what's true though. Your business is one that works both ways. Like it does work both ways in my line of work too, but it's a nasty business to be in. Retail lending and buying leads and online marketing to get leads, right? So you're in a space where there's not enough people in your space doing it. So any effort you put in there, you get a great return. In my space, people have been doing that for years, and it's the lowest margin, hardest to sell shit out there.
Yeah.
And it and there's nothing but a bunch of salespeople who just overpromise to try to get the business and either do it for free, practically compared to margin I'm willing to work for.
Well, yeah, but here's what I'll say. I don't have a lot of people running around trying to sign up my ideal client and then needing me to help facilitate their deal.
Yep.
That's I think that's where I think it kind of, like all the real estate agents in some way, they kind of need your help a little bit.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
You're talking about if I'm pitching to real estate agent, yes, but I'm talking about like the closest thing to my field that's like yours is not marketing to real estate agents. It's marketing to the clients themselves. Hey,
that's yes.
refinance with me, buy your house with me.
No.
Right.
I agree, but I agree. But you also have a bunch of people out there running around trying to sell your service in a way.
Yeah.
Which I don't have. You could say financial planners do that, but they don't really do it like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's two different kinds of referral partners. I always tell them like there's essentials and then there's the partnership ones. Partnership ones are like ours. Like if I never referred you, you never referred me, our businesses are fine. But if we do, it makes it better. But the essential parts is this: builders, as much as they may or may not like it, need an agent to list it, whether it's them or whatever, right? There has to be an agent that's going to list it. Realtors need to have a lender who's going to close on them, unless all their clients are cash, which that's never the case, right?
Right.
Both lenders and realtors always need title and escrow services.
Right.
So in the real estate realm, there's these referral partner relationships that are basically essential, and it's not a question if they're going to hire someone of that need. It's a question of whether or not you're the one they're going to hire of all the options they have.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the that's the harder. I mean, that's what makes it harder for me to like identify those type of people, and build those kind of relationships over time. So, and I don't know that they really exist. And the time that you have to put into that is I'm just too lazy.
Oh, I do have something I want to tell you about.
Okay. So let's go.
And then you can tell me if I did it wrong. Smarty pants attorney. So instead of trying to have the property moved into a trust and then assigning some kind of vesting to me through the trust, which you said what you said was like eye-opening. The grantor can never be changed.
Yeah.
We just always made the trust the grantor me from the very beginning.
Yep.
And if they recognize that the trust was not the person who deeded it from the LLC, and you want to charge the excise tax, I'll pay it. But technically, the transfer happened, and the only trust documents that exist say that I'm the grantor from the beginning, just like if I was buying it.
It depends on. Okay, yeah, but you
Does that work?
No.
Why?
Not. So when you do that, what typically will happen is they will see, because you list the trustee on the RETA, real estate excise tax affidavit, and you'll have the seller. And if the seller and the trustee are not the same person, that will raise a red flag often, and they will want to see the trust, or they'll want some sort of written affidavit from you that the ownership interest has not changed. So when and this is, when it's a revocable trust, it's not always this. That's not necessarily always the case, although that never happens with the way that we do it, right? Because normally it's just a client owns a house and they make a trust and they put the house in the trust, so you don't really ever have that discrepancy. But that is one of the things that can happen. I think it's also you're checking a box on the RETA that says there's no change in beneficial ownership when you make that transaction. So, the RETA is not the problem. I mean, the excise tax is not the problem. You probably should just pay that anyway if you're buying it. But
so I was thinking that when he did it, he probably marked that he was a trustee, but he's not. And then there's no trust paper that ever says that he was the trustee or grantor. He was, everything just says me. So just reach out to him and say like, hey, like it was actually a private
because it's not as if that's going to throw off warning signals for like a lender. They're not gonna. They don't operate. There's no synergy there between the the auditor or whatever, the state excise tax collector, and the bank. They're not. They don't care. They're not talking to each other. So the best, I mean, like I said, in any circumstance, you're going to do it. You're going to, what you should do is, here's what you should do. Here's what you can do. It's what we do sometimes. If somebody wants to have anonymity, for example, you can be the creator of the trust and he can be the trustee to begin with. And when you create the trust and then you record the deed, then he can just resign as the trustee and you can be the backup trustee and you can step in and then run everything. So when you do the paperwork,
the grantor from the beginning,
inside you are the owner of the trust. You're just not the trustee to begin with. So like if somebody wants anonymity, we will be the trustee of the trust and we will resign like almost immediately after we do it, so that when you and the reason they do that is because when you are the trustee, when the deed is recorded, your name is technically on that deed. So it's possible if somebody did a search that the person's name would show up, even though it's as trustee of this trust, it still is recorded like as the owner. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like Christopher Small as trustee of the CMS trust. That is the title of the trust. So what we do is it's CMS Law Firm as trustee of this trust on the deed when we record it. And then we just resign after the fact. There's no need to update the deed in that way. And so then the client becomes the trustee of the trust. And they are the owner of the trust, so they can update it whenever they want.
Well, in my case, Jason never was a trustee, but he thought he was going to be, so he recorded it that way, and then we ended up changing it after it was already recorded. Because the trust was never finalized. So when I finalized it, I just did it where I was a grantor from the very beginning. The contract literally says that the trust was the buyer of the property.
No, I understand, but you should not record the deed before the trust is created.
I know. Well, we thought we had to create it, but we didn't sign it around. And once we realized that we're making mistakes,
I understand. But then here's where you may run into problems when you try to sell the property, because the name of the trust includes the date the trust was created.
Mm-hmm.
So if the date the trust is created is after the date of the transaction, those two things are not going to match up
No, we made a transaction happen right afterwards. Oh, I see what you're saying, because we vested it beforehand.
Correct. So like if you recorded the deed and signed it 10/15/24, but you didn't make your trust until 10/17/24, the name of the trust would be the Christopher Small S trustee of the CMS trust under agreement dated 10/17/24, which is going to be it depends on how closely they look, I guess, if anybody ever does look. But the title company, they might be looking for something like that and see. So you want to backdate that trust basically, if you can.
Yep.
But you have a notary that's going to be signing it and doing stuff, but potentially. So you guys are just creating a bunch of problems for yourselves. Trying to be sneaky.
Learning.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
We're learning though.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. So that is one way that you could do it. You could be the trustee and not the owner of the trust. And then do it that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're not gonna. Like we said before, I don't think any of this makes that big of a difference when it comes to the lender. I just don't think they're paying attention. There's just too many loans out there, and there's too many things going on. They're not auditing like any individual pieces of property. They probably would check if you missed a payment or if it got on their radar somehow.
Yep.
That might happen, but I mean, if you keep paying, they don't care. You know what I'm saying? They just don't care. You're paying. There's no reason why they would, because even then you'll think like, oh, well, they want to get this higher interest rate. The time it takes them to find your specific piece of property and go through that process, it's just the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Small amount anyways.
That's what I'm saying. But what they are going to make on your individual property and the time it's going to take to actually find that, because what is that? Like maybe 0.1% of all transactions where something like this happens. 99.9% are just regular homeowners that just own their home until they sell it and then they move on. It's like to find your needle in the haystack, it would take forever. Just would take a really long time. So it's just not worth it as long as you're paying the note. Like who cares? So it's just like, look, when somebody dies and a family member takes over, they never find out. They never say anything. They're not allowed to do anything if they do find out. But they never know.
Right.
The family just keeps paying it until they want to sell it. And then they get, the bank gets paid off and it's all good. So
got it.
That's it. That is it.
I'm learning more about this stuff. I appreciate it. You guys take your notes. But trusts are not as simple as you think they would be.
Well, it just, when you think it's just, to do kind of like really like, I don't know, different things, it's harder because they're not necessarily created for that purpose. They're really created to help people avoid probate and have control when they're gone. So the anticipation or the expectation for the rules of the trust are the person that makes the trust, particularly a revocable trust, is going to continue to be the person that is in charge of that trust until they cannot be anymore for whatever reason. But part of the what draws people to revocable trusts is you get to maintain control over everything in the trust. You can change the trust. You can move things in and out of the trust. That's why the grantor of the trust typically doesn't change. That's the whole point, is that you retain that ability, even if you're not the trustee, as long as you're not incapacitated, you still retain the ability to change that trust. Yep. So, all right, cool. That's a good spot, I think, to quit.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. Great stuff. Really good stuff. All right, cool. So, I don't know we need anything to say anything else. If you want to do some loans or you need some real estate investment help, KeaneLoans.com. Isn't that right? Keane Loans?
Yep.
Keane Loans. KeaneLoans.com. If you want to talk about taxes or estate planning, just Google me, I guess. I'm everywhere. All right. And that's it for today. As always, I'm Chris.
I'm Keane.
This is the Business Barbershop Podcast.
See you guys
See
later.
ya.